We're going to start with the Mishnah, Daf Chafei Amud Beis. This is 25b4. And again, remember, we had spent quite some time discussing the extra stringencies of Kodesh versus Truma, that we are more stringent with the laws surrounding Kodesh than Truma. But now we shifted gears and we went to show the different leniences by Kodesh that do not apply to Truma, which means that there are certain areas where Truma is more stringent. We're more stringent about what is okay and what isn't okay to use in order of purity and impurity for contents of Truma versus things that are going to be used for Kodesh. Now, why are these stringencies left in place for Truma, but they are laxed and made easier for Kodesh? It's basically called necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention, and it was absolutely necessary to be able to make certain dispensations when it comes to Kodesh, because if you don't make these dispensations, it's not going to be practical to be able to offer up all these sacrificial items, because you're not going to have enough vessels to be able to do it. So let's see the Mishnah. It says in the Mishnah, again, another stringency that is in Truma, but not with Kodesh, is that min hamoidiin v'lifnim, from the town of Moidiin and inwards. What is the law with regards to trusting the Am Haaretz who's making earthenware vessels? So we say from this place called Moidiin, which is approximately 15 mil. All right, that's a Hebrew, it's a measurement for, I don't know exactly how big, maybe a mile, whatever it is, less than a mile, but whatever it is, 15 mil from Yerushalayim. So from that point and within towards Yerushalayim, then the potters who make these different small vessels are believed. They believe, they're trusted with regards to the tahara of the earthenware vessels that they made, which we are going to see were in short supply in Yerushalayim, and we'll see why. Min hamoidin v'lachutz, from this place called Moidiin and outwards, away from Yerushalayim, right? Ein nemanim, they are not believed. So now, that's the halacha. Okay, that's the halacha that was put down. However, we want to understand within this itself, where's the cutoff point? At what point do we say that the rule applies and the rule no longer applies? In other words, at what point are they no longer believed? So that's what the Mishnah asks. Ketzad, how is this? So he says like this: Hakoide, the guy who is a potter, who is selling the pot, nichnas, he is going in, lifnim min hamoidin, he's going inwards of Moidiin. He's then believed. But here are a few stipulations. Number one, hu hakadar, he's got to be the very potter.
Rabbi, inwards means towards Jerusalem.
That's correct, towards Yerushalayim. So this potter has to be the potter who actually made it. Okay? He's not selling somebody else's pots. It's his pot. So he made it, and he comes in and he says he was the one that took care to make sure that it was tahara. Vehein hakteros, and it's these very pots that he made. He cannot add some other pots that were made even by other Amharatzim that were made in Moidiin, right? It's only the potter himself. We trust you for yours and yours alone. Vehein halekhin, and it's got to be by these very purchases, meaning that the chaver who's coming to buy this vessel, right? It's only they who can use those vessels that they bought from the potter who is selling his own vessels. In other words, you cannot go and purchase from a chaver vessels that he bought from an Am Haaretz, from Moidiin and inwards. It has to be direct purchase from the guy who made it, only the vessels that he made, and he has to be going inwards of Moidiin. Yatsa, but if if he was leaving, if he left Madian, heading away from Yerushalayim, in the Neman, then this Amaretz is no longer believed. Now, the Gemara later on, shortly, is going to explain to us why we made all these leniencies. But basically, to give you a bit of a sneak peek, what I want to do is I want to share with you a little bit of Rambam, because the Rambam sets. Whoops, 1 second. No, the Rambam sets it out in a clear way. So here's halacha 5, but you can skip the first part of 5, right? And go to second. Yeah, to where does the above apply? Actually, you know what? Let's just read the whole thing. By the end of 7, you'll understand everything. Okay. When there was a container of wine or oil, and we saw an unlearned person waiting and protecting it so that he could take accompanying offerings for it. That's like the Nesachim. His word is accepted with regards to the purity of the container for even 70 days before the time when wine presses and olive vats are active. Before these 70 days, by contrast, the word is not accepted. This is something we already learned. Let's move on. Where does the above apply? In the other portions of the land of Israel. Okay? However, in Jerusalem, by contrast, the word of the Amaretz, of unlearned people, that empty earthenware containers are pure for consecrated articles, is always accepted. That is what we are saying with regards to our Mishnah, okay? That if you're within proximity to Yerushalayim, from Median and within, the words of the Amaretz, that an empty kli cheres, right, are pure for kodesh, they're going to be accepted. This applies with regards to small utensils or large ones, whether they are empty, full or empty. You're going to see not everybody agrees with that. Implied is that the word of an unlearned person that a container is pure is accepted, even though the liquids in the container are impure. How does that work? Again, I said to you, when it comes to the gzera of the Chachamim, they can come along and they can make certain distinctions even between a vessel and what's in the vessel. Even if the garment of the unlearned person, which is considered as impure due to midras, enters the container is assumed to be pure with regards to sacrificial foods. Now, you're going to see this. This is all going to come up in the Gemara, right? So the Rambam points out, why was such leniency shown? Why do you make all these exceptions and dispensations? So he says, as we'll see in the Gemara, because kilns for earthenware containers are not made in Yerushalayim. The reason why they didn't do it in Yerushalayim is because they were worried that the smoke is going to come and blacken the walls. So they didn't allow for it in Yerushalayim itself. And so therefore, they couldn't make earthenware vessels for Kodesh. A chaver couldn't make it in Yerushalayim. No one could make it in Yerushalayim. So they had to go to a place called Modin, which is where most of the potters were located. And because you couldn't make them in Yerushalayim, we had to trust the Amaratim, we had to trust the unlearned people in Modin. Okay, so now, halacha 6, from Modin and closer, he says Modin, I don't know why, but anyway, the Gemara is Modin and closer. The word of the Amaretz is accepted with regards to earthenware containers. Outside that area, the word is not accepted. Okay? Modin itself is sometimes considered as within the area and sometimes as outside. What is implied? Again, this is looking at our Mishnah. Okay? If a chaver was entering the town, and this is already starting the Gemara. If a chaver was entering that town, and an unlearned person carrying an earthenware container was departing. Yes, you understand the scenario over here? The chaver's coming in, and he's going towards Yerushalayim, he's coming into Madi'in, and he's going towards Yerushalayim, and the guy carrying the earthenware is on his way out. His word that the container is pure with regards to sacrificial food is accepted in Madi'in. Okay? In other words, like this. Because I'm concerned that this guy is moving towards going out, right? And the chaver is going towards Yerushalayim. If the chaver doesn't buy it now, you're going to miss the chance, and therefore he walks out and he's no longer believed. So because the scenario is that the Amoritz is walking, heading out, and the Chaver is walking, heading in, so not to miss the opportunity to purchase it, we're going to trust the word of the Amoritz. However, if they were both entering or departing, the word of the unlearned person is not accepted unless he is closer to Yerushalayim than Madin. In other words, we're basically saying, we're making a dispensation for you that you could come along and buy these. So why would you wait or not wait, depending on the circumstances, and not do it properly? In other words, if you're further out, just wait. You're both entering into Madin, right, towards Yerushalayim. Get further in and then buy it. Don't buy it now. Wait until you get to the place where it's closer to Yerushalayim, where the rabbi said that it's for sure okay to buy it. And likewise, if you're both walking out away from Yerushalayim, right? So we're going to say to you, well, you waited. Why did you wait till here? If you were both heading out, you should have bought it in the first moment you saw him, not when you're further out. You should have done it earlier on in, and therefore we're going to, so to speak, give you a knas and say that we're not going to trust the Amoritz. We're going to give you this penalty that you don't trust the Amoritz because you left it too late. You left it till you're both leaving the area. You should have bought it from him earlier. So on the way out, we say you should have bought it earlier. On the way in, we say, well, you should just wait a little bit until he's in the place where we say that you trust him. Okay. Now, last halacha. The following rules apply when a potter brings pots and places them down closer to Jerusalem than Madin. Potential customers come and he tells them that it is pure. Now, if a chaver purchases a pot and brings it in, it is considered as pure with regards to sacrificial food, but not with regards to truma, as we explained. If he purchases a pot and took it outside of Madin, it is impure, both for sacrificial food and for truma. This applies even though these are the same pots and the same potter. His word is accepted only within the radius beginning in Yerushalayim. So we see over here that the rabbis have the power to come along and say that we're making a leniency, but you have to follow what we say exactly. You cannot come along and take that leniency and say, well, now that they've made the leniency, now I can do whatever I want with the pot. I can go back out. No, you can't go back out. You can't go back out of Madin, further away from Yerushalayim, with these pots of the Amoritz and expect them to still remain Kodesh, Tahar for Kodesh. You can't do that. What you can do is you could take them and you can go into Yerushalayim towards the Beis HaMikdash and use them. But that's it. You can't play around. Okay, that's the Rambam, and we've learned the Mishnah. Let's move to the Gemara. Any questions before we go to the Gemara?
Modim, is that Modi'in?
Yeah, I think so. But again, I'm not sure if it's the Monday Modi'in or not. It's a place which is 15 mil, which is relatively close to Yerushalayim. Okay, so we said that this Modi'im is a borderline for trusting the Amoritz. Says so. Now, with regards to Modi'in itself, Tana, it was told in the Brisa, Modi'in, with regards to Modi'in itself, Pa'amim kilitnim, Pa'amim kilachutz. In the area of Modi'in itself, sometimes parts of it is going to be considered as within, and sometimes it's going to be considered as without that border for trusting an Amoritz. Ketzad. How's this so? So he says like this. Here's an example. Yeah, Kador Yoitze v'Chaver Nichnas. We have the case where the potter is going out, right? He's leaving. He's leaving inwards area to enter the town. And the chaver is entering Moedim from the outside. And so therefore what happens is they meet in Moedim Kilifnim, then we say that the town itself is as the inward parts. So therefore the chaver can purchase the vessels over there. And what did we say? Why? Because as the chaver is going more to Yerushalayim, and this one's going further away from Yerushalayim, we're worried that you're going to miss the opportunity, and we're no longer going to believe the Am Haaretz if he keeps going much further. So therefore, we say at this point we're going to consider it as within, and therefore he's believed. Now, what happens if Shneim Nichnasim, if they're both entering the town from the outside? Here we go with the Daf Chavav Amud Aleph 26a. Or if both of them are leaving the inward area for the town, so then we say kilachotz. Then it's considered as the outwards area, and so therefore the chaver cannot purchase the vessels from him. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, "Afanan namitanina." We've also learned this in our Mishnah itself. In other words, he's saying that if you're very precise about in the language of the Mishnah, you'll see that this was implied already in our Mishnah. How so? Because we see it says in our Mishnah that the potter who sold the pots, he entered inwards of Maidim, then he can be trusted. Taima, what's the reason he can be trusted? Because he is in the inwards of Maidim. Ha Maidim Gufa. Let me assume then that in Maidim itself, then he is not going to be trusted, right? In other words, from the fact that the Mishnah only mentions that if he's entering in, that's when he's believed. So then we'll apply that the only reason why we believe him is because he's in inwards of Madi'in. But in Madi'in itself, then he's not going to be trusted. But if you precise and you look at the end of the Mishnah, Ema Sefer, it says, Yatza Eine Neman, that if he left, he's not trusted. But 1 second, if you're telling me that the only time he's not trusted is once he's actually left Maidim, then you're implying HaMaidim Gufa Neman. Then you must be saying that in Maidim itself, he is trusted. So therefore, since the Mishnah itself seems to be contradictory, because on the one hand it's saying Maidim is okay, it's only once you leave it's not okay, and in the beginning of the Mishnah it says that only when you're going inwards it's okay, but Maidim itself is not okay. It must mean that there's got to be a distinction between times when a certain place will be considered yes okay and times where it won't be okay. So this is what Abai says. So isn't it from here a proof that Khan, when the beginning of the Mishnah says that it's when in the second part of the Mishnah, when it says only when he went out it's not okay, it's talking about it's talking about when the guy is heading out. He's still inside, but he's heading out, and the chaver is coming in, and then we say even though he's heading out, but since he's still within, therefore we consider we accept it. However, Khan in the beginning clause where it said that there's only when you're heading inward, when you're inwards, it's okay, but the further out is not okay, even though you're within Maidim itself. It's It's in a case where they're both leaving together or they're both coming together. Either way, we'll say in that scenario, you either have to wait until you get further in, or you need to purchase it as soon as you can so that you're not heading out with it. Okay. Shema Minah, so he says from here, it's taka a proof that which it says in the Brisa is actually implied in our Mishnah itself. Okay, that's the end of this particular distinction discussing about the geographical location and whether you're going in or out. Now, the Mishnah is going to be, the Gemara is going to analyze the Mishnah itself when you say that they're believed with regards to vessels, what kind of vessels? So, says the Gemara, Tana, Brisa, with regards to an Am Haaretz, it says as follows: Nichnosim b'kli cheres hadakin l'kodesh. They are trusted. Nemanim b'kli cheres hadakin l'kodesh. They're trusted regarding the tahara of small earthenware vessels that are going to be used for kodesh. Again, not for truma, only for kodesh, right? But they're not trusted in regard to large vessels, and they're not trusted to use these small vessels for truma. It's only for kodesh, and it's only out of necessity. Omer Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish cites as follows: V'hu shenitolin biyadei achas. When I say a small vessel, what constitutes small? So he says that it can be carried with one hand. Rabbi Yechanan Amar. Rabbi Yechanan argues, and he says, no. It applies even to small vessels that cannot be carried with one hand. Nevertheless, they're still trusted with these vessels because they were needed for kodesh. Okay. Another dispute between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan. Rish Lakish says, when the rabbis came along and said these small earthenware vessels are okay, you know when they said it's okay? It's only when they're empty. In other words, as follows. We know that you have a vessel and you have stuff that you put in the vessel. So when we want to make a special dispensation and to tell you that these potters who are making vessels, right, their vessels are tahar, for kodesh, that's only if they're giving you an empty vessel, like a brand new vessel, an empty vessel. Then we'll trust them that it was made okay. But if they've put their food or drink or their wine or whatever it is into the barrel, into this keli, so the Rish Lakish says that's not a case where the rabbi said it's okay. Why? Because we're going to assume that their produce, the products that were put into the vessels are not good, and that would make the vessel no good. But Rabbi Yechanan disagrees. Rabbi Yechanan says, "Afilu malayin," even if the Am Haaretz has filled the vessel with his own produce, and he comes along and he gives it to the chaver, and he says it's tahar, we believe him. What about the gezerah that the rabbi said that we always assume that the vessel, that the contents of the Am Haaretz are going to be tamei? Over here, with regards to kodesh, from in and in, it's all good according to Rabbi Yechanan. And Rabbi Yechanan goes a step further. Va'afilu apikarsusai l'seichai, even if, with regards to his garment, he has a garment. Now, the garment of an Am Haaretz is considered by the Chachamim to always be a midras for a zav, which is a huge problem. Nevertheless, according to Rabbi Yechanan, the rabbi's opinion is that when a person is selling his vessel to a chaver who's taking it and wants to use it for kodesh, even if he has a garment inside that vessel, we're still going to say that it's tahar. So now, Rava comes and he clarifies his position, the position of Rabbi Yechanan. Rava says, "U'moide Rabbi Yechanan b'mashkin atzmon she'ein tamein." However, Rabbi Yechanan admits regarding the liquid itself that it's tamei, despite the vessel being tahar. How's that even possible? How can you have an earthenware vessel that we're going to say that the earthenware vessel you can still use for kodesh, but the wine, for example, the liquid itself is not going to be tahar? How does that work? Says the Gemara, Va'al titma. Don't wonder about this inconsistency, because we find it elsewhere. Shari login male mashkin. If you remember the discussion with Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, we say that in the case of a flask filled with water, that we say, or with a liquid, we say, if you stuck it in between the bottom floor and the top floor, where the bottom floor had a corpse, right? So we say, login tamein to mashiva. The flask itself is tamei with 7-day corpse tuma. Or mashkin tahirin, but we say with regards to the liquid, that the liquid is tahar. So we see that the status of the flask is not consistent with the status of the contents, and we see from this as one example of where, when it comes to a decree from the rabbis, this kind of distinction between the two things is somehow allowed. Okay, so that's the shtickle. Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay, so we have a
Rabbi,
very
so
yes.
just as a summary.
Yeah.
it's only true if your intention is that you're going to take this earthenware pot and you're going to use it to take Kodesh
That's correct.
to Yerushalayim.
That's correct.
And
yeah.
Irrespective of what was in there beforehand, as long as it meets the requirements that the potter himself is within the confines of Modi'in and inward.
Yes. However,
you're fine.
Yes. However, there's one caveat, and that is the Am Haaretz has to be telling you that it's tahor. That from his perspective, he's tried to be as careful as he can be with what he has been instructed to do in order to keep it tahor. In other words, the Chachamim don't just leave it for the Am Haaretz to supervise himself and learn the halachas himself. We're saying this area Modin was the center for making earthenware vessels, right? That was the closest place where everybody was busy making these earthenware vessels, right? And this was the closest place you could go and pick up your earthenware vessel, which was needed to for the Beis Hamikdash, right? For bringing up your Kodesh. So we speak to all the potters and we explain to them that the chaver is going to come to you and is going to try to buy your earthenware from you. However, it's very serious. This is Kodesh we're talking about, okay? And since it is Kodesh, therefore, we are going to trust you. It's a special dispensation. We're going to trust you that when you tell us it's tahor, we believe you. Although ordinarily we would never believe you. But we will believe you with regards to the pots. Now, although they've said that they've come and they've kept it tahor, we trust them only with regards to the vessel and not with the contents that are inside the vessels. In other words, if he made the vessel with tahara and he just ran out of room for his wine and he said, look, I have my last pot that I made ready to sell to you. The problem is it has some of my wine in it. I'll empty it out now and you can have this vessel. That's all I have. So you're allowed to take that vessel. What about the wine? The wine, I'm going to say, was not okay because it's the wine of Am Haaretz. And the vessel is okay. Why? Because the rabbis can do that.
And well, the question, my problem is with putting in the Am Haaretz's, let's say, beged.
Right.
That's considered to be midras.
That's correct.
Inside.
Yes.
Doesn't the Am Haaretz know that by doing something like that, he is causing the vessel to become tameh?
It's possible that he does. And therefore, it is possible that he's careful to make sure that his clothes are not midras because he wants to sell these vessels. And yet the rabbis say, it doesn't matter that you're careful. You're an Am Haaretz, and therefore we don't trust you with regards to your clothes. We don't trust you with regards to the reason why we come along and we say accept the vessel is because we say we will believe you in as much as allowing the person to use the vessel, but I'm sure you've heard the term palginam dibura, right? Palginam dibura means you split the word. We believe this, but we don't believe that, right? It's inconsistent, but sometimes that's what we do. Sometimes we say, I believe you for one thing, I don't believe you for the other thing. So I'm going to believe you in as much as I'll allow the chaver to buy the vessel, but I won't believe you in as much as trusting you that this beged, as it relates to anything else outside of the vessel, is not a midras.
Yeah. All right.
It doesn't have to make sense. This is the takana of the Chachamim. But listen, it does relieve me a little bit that the Gemara itself says, don't be so astounded and shocked by this, because this is what the rabbis do. Okay. All right. Now, the next tickle in the Mishnah, we're going to now two final stringencies of Truma over Kodesh. The first one is, this is very interesting. Hagaboyim shenichnesu l'toich habayis. What happens if you have tax agents? Now, tax agents were not the nicest people, and they were not the most trustworthy people either, because they were working for the Roman government, or whoever happened to be the occupying forces at the time, and they would go in and they would take things for the king or for the Caesar, for whoever it was, and we don't consider them to be respectable people who either know or care about the laws of Tum Tahara. So we say like this: if tax agents came into a house, and similarly, Haganovim shehechziru es hakelim, likewise thieves who returned the earthenware vessels they stole. So now we're talking about not just ordinary thieves. We're talking about thieves who are doing tshuva, and they're coming to return what they stole. So in this case, both of these groups of people, ne'emanin loima lo naganu, they are trusted with regards to saying that they did not touch. They didn't touch the inside of the vessel. So let's say the Ganovim. Let's talk about the Ganovim first for a minute. The Ganovim come along and they stole your earthenware barrel, and they bring it back and they say, we didn't touch the inside. In other words, the way it works with an earthenware barrel is if it's closed, it doesn't contract any tuma unless you touch it. Something tuma goes into the space inside of it. So if they come back and say, here's your vessel back, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken it, and I'm letting you know I didn't touch the inside of it. So we trust him. And with regards to the tax agents, right? If they come back and they say, listen, there were certain things that we didn't touch. In other words, I came into your house, and let's say I took the piano, right? But I didn't go into your kitchen. I didn't touch anything from your kitchen. I didn't touch anything from your dining room. I didn't touch anything. I just, so do we trust them? The answer is we trust them with regards to everything in the house that was tahar, if you want to use it for kodesh. However, we will not trust them with regards to everything else that's left in the house with regards to truma. That's one stringency that we have with truma over kodesh. That with kodesh we will trust them. The second stringency, uvi Yerushalayim, and in Yerushalayim itself, nemanim al hakodesh. We say that the Amoritz are trusted with regards to kodesh, right? Obeshas haregel afala truma. But when it comes to Yom Tiv, right, we trust them even with regards to the tahara of truma, and there's a reason for that, as we'll see in the Gemara. Gemara is going to address all of these. Okay, so that's so just to summarize, we have a case where somebody went into a house, and whether it was an agent or it was a ganef, and they touched things, they're believed with regards to things that you need for kodesh, that you're able to trust them. If they say they didn't touch certain things, we wouldn't trust them if you wanted to use those things for truma. And in Yerushalayim, the Amoritz believes with kodesh, meaning a whole year round, but they're trusted with regards to truma only around the Yom Tov period. Okay, so now we're going to come and bring what seems to be a contradiction between our Mishnah and another Mishnah. V'reminu, says the Gemara, you came along and told me that if tax agents claim that they didn't touch other vessels, they're believed. It says in another Mishnah as follows. It says, if a tax agent, they went into a house, that everything inside the house is all tamei, because we assume that they touched everything. They're not trusted to guarantee the tar of anything, even for those things that are going to be used for kodesh. What are we talking about over here? The agents would come in and say, we want to seize something for the Caesar or for the king. So how are they going to find the most precious item? Well, they're going to turn the whole house upside down until they find the most precious thing to try and get the most value for the king. So therefore, it seems from this Mishnah, right, that we just quoted, that if they came into your house, we assume that they turned the whole house upside down. And since they turned the whole house upside down, we don't trust them to say, we didn't touch this, we didn't touch that. We don't believe you. Okay? So here in our Mishnah saying, we do believe you. And in that Mishnah who says, we don't believe you, seems to be a contradiction. And for the Gemara, lekasha, it's not a contradiction. Why? Because we're talking about two different scenarios. The agents who come in are Jewish. Now, in the Mishnah that we say that we don't trust them for anything, the Mishnah Taharis is talking about where there's another Gentile agent collector, a tax collector that comes along together with them during the search. And so therefore what? So therefore, they're going to be worried that this guy is going to come along and he's going to report on them to the king that they didn't do a proper job, that they left certain things untouched. So therefore, because they're worried that this guy might report on them, they're going to turn over the whole house. But in this case, it's talking about where there's no Gentile with them during the search, and therefore we could trust them that they came in and they just took the Shabbos Leichter, they just took the candlesticks, which are the most precious thing, but they didn't touch anything else. We trust them. The Tanan, we've learned in the Mishnah, if there's a Gentile with them, they're trusted to say, we have not entered, but they're not trusted to say that we entered and we're not touched. In other words, and we didn't touch anything. In other words, if you have tax collectors that come along and they said that we were with a guy, right? And when it came to your house, we didn't go in, we trust you. But for you to come along and say that you went into my house and there were certain things you touched and there were certain things you didn't touch, we won't trust you. Why? Because there's a guy there. So that's what we're saying in the case of Taharis is the scenario. Although it's not spelled out clearly in the Mishnah, that's what we are applying to that Mishnah to say that it's speaking about the case of the tax agents that came with a guy with them. Now, Frank the Gemara, why are we so careful when there's another guy? Because when there's a guy with them, what's the difference? How is this a reason not to believe them? So there's a machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar as to the answer to that question. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, one of them said that the fear of a Gentile is upon him, right? Because they're worried that they're going to be reported. And the other one says that the reason is because you're worried about the monarchy, the fear of the monarchy. They're worried that the Gentile will report them. Okay? In other words, well, we'll see. My Benayu, what's the difference between these two answers? Whether it's you're worried about the goy himself coming along and giving you flack for not doing a proper job, or being worried about the fear that he's going to report to you to the king. He says the difference between them, the practical difference is when you have a Gentile who's not eminent. In other words, he's not able to punish them. In other words, if you walk in with a guy and that guy is your boss, then we say that according to the one who said that the only reason that you cannot trust him is because he's afraid of the guy. So in that case, according to him, this particular scenario won't be a problem because you're the boss, not the guy. So therefore, it wouldn't matter even if the guy came in with you. However, according to the opinion who says that the reason why when a guy is with you, you're not trusted is because you're worried about the king. So in both cases, whether you're the boss or he's the boss, in either case, he can go and report on you to the government, in which case, we're not going to trust you. Okay, that's that shtickle. Weiter. Says the Gemara, we mentioned in the Mishnah, likewise thieves who returned the earthenware vessels that they stole, we say that we trust them, that they say that they didn't touch it, that it's still taught. But I'll ask you a contradiction. It says, if thieves entered into the house, we say that only the items in the area where the thieves walked are tamei, for we presume that they came into contact with everything in the area. So now, if they're not trusted to tell us that any item is tahar, so if the vessels in the place that they walked are presumed tamei, then the vessels that they stole and returned should certainly be tamei. Think about it for a minute. In this Mishnah that we're quoting over here, right? It says that people come in and they ransack your house. but you're able to tell this room they went into and turned everything over. This room they went into and they didn't turn everything over, right? Excuse me, this room they didn't go into because we see that it's clean, the door was closed and nobody touched anything. So we trust only the places where they went. Do we assume that everything is tummy? And the places where they didn't go, it's not tummy. So 1 second. Here, we're talking about a scenario where there's no doubt that they came into contact with it. So why are you trusting them that it's tahar? You understand the question? Nachamon. If I come along and I say that Ganavim went into our house, anything that they touched in the rooms that they turned over is all tamei, right? But only the rooms that they didn't go into. So will we say that they didn't go into it, so therefore it's not tamei? Here, there's no doubt that they came into contact with it because they're holding it. They stole it, so they're holding it. So it should for sure be tamei. So Amar Reb Pinchas Mishmei de Rava. Reb Pinchas says in the name of the Rava, it's not a question. Why? Because here in our case, where we say that we trust them, it's kisha'asu tshuva. It's when they did tshuva. Since they did tshuva, that's why we trust them. That's why we trust them. We trust them that it's not that with regards to kodesh, we trust them that those vessels are not tamei. Daikanami. This is also something that we can deduce from a precise reading of the Mishnah. The Gedoni. It says over there, they returned the vessels. It's not that you found it. It's not that the police pulled them up on charges and then your vessel was amongst them and now you're getting it back and then they're telling you. It's the Mishnah uses the language of shehechziru. They themselves came to bring it back to you. So that's why we see they're doing tshuva. That's why we trust them. Shema mino, Taka, we can learn from here a proof that that's why we trust them. The other Mishnah is talking about stam ganovim before they do any tshuva, and therefore we don't trust anything. Okay. In Yerushalayim, we trust the Amoritz for kodesh. It was taught in a brisa that it means that they are trusted regarding the tahara of large earthenware vessels that will be used for kodesh. Therefore, in Yerushalayim, in Yerushalayim itself, we're not talking about Medin. In Yerushalayim itself, right? We can purchase these vessels from Amaretz. Why are we so lenient to the point of even trusting them with regards to big vessels, right? And earthenware at that. Why do we trust them? And for the Gemara, there's a reason. Because you're not allowed to make these kilns in Yerushalayim, which you will use to make these earthenware vessels, because we're worried about them blackening the walls. And so therefore, in Yerushalayim, there's no choice but to permit these vessels of the Amars, because there's this principle that you do not make a stringency on the tzibur, she'ein hatzibur yachal lamed boy, that the community can't handle it. Last piece before the Mishnah, in the time of Yom Tov, we trust them even with regards to Truma. Why? Why do we trust them? So we learn this from a pasuk, Manan Mili. From where do we know this? That we trust an Amma Oretz, right? Even with regards to the Tahara, with regards to Truma. Amar Rabbi Yishub ben Levi, Rabbi Yishub ben Levi says, the Amikra says in the pasuk, it says, "Vayesod kol ish Yisrael el ha'ir ki ish echad chaverim." It says, this is a pasuk in the book of Shoftim. It says, and all the men of Israel gathered to the city like one man, comrades, which is chaverim. So we see over here, we learn from this that Hakosov Asan Kulam Chaverim, at the time when they all gathered together, which is the time of the Shalosh Regalim, right? At that time, the Torah takes them and makes them into Chaverim. They consider them all Chaverim, and that's why we trust them, even with regards to Truma around the time of the Shalosh Regalim. And that's the end of this Shtickle Gemara. Stop here. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And please remember to go out and get a Maseches Megillah. And I look forward to finishing this Masechta and Amir Hashem starting the next Masechta. And have a wonderful day.
Rebbe, if I can, only because I'm feeling guilty that maybe I was too persuasive on Megillah. So I just want 2 minutes to do Marcus.
Okay.
Nobody can say that I didn't give a fair shot for Marcus, or that I misled them, or I didn't let them know. If I can. Everybody interested? Not interested?
Go ahead.
Interested. Marcus is the tail end of Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin was originally longer. And when it became so long, they broke off the last 3 chapters of Sanhedrin and they made a separate thing of Makis, because you need to have a Sanhedrin to give Makis. That's a requirement. So the first 3 chapters, I mean, there's only 3 chapters in Makis. So only the last one talks about, the last chapter talks about all the different things for which you can get Makis. There's 100 or 200 different things that you can get Makis. The other parts of the Masechta are, the beginning it starts with, we have the thing Eidim Zomamim, that if you need witnesses for everything. He stole, he did this Avera, you always need 2 witnesses. What happens if you catch the witnesses to be Zomamim? Which doesn't just mean a lie, but whatever they are, they're disqualified as witnesses. What happens to them? And the rule is, whatever kasha zamam, whatever they lied about, that's what you do to them. If they say Reuven killed Shimon, and they're found to be zomamim, then you kill them. Okay? What happens when you can't do to them what they wanted to do and accomplish? Like they want to make a Kohen, hustle. They say, no, he was a child of a this and a that, he's not a Kohen. Okay, so they would make you need a witness to make him not a Kohen. Okay, now you find that they are Zomamim. What do you do to them? You say, you're not a Kohen? He's not a Kohen, he's a Yisrael, and who cares? So that's when they get lashes. That's when they get makas. So that's why it was all stuck in makas. And the second chapter is about the cities of refuge, which somebody killed somebody by accident. He has to run to the city until the Kohen Gadol dies. So the second chapter talks about what kind of incidents are included in that. It happened by accident. And what kind of Kohen Gadol and what happens when the Kohen Gadol dies. And that's the whole thing of Marcus. It's a fun Masechta too. And
now we don't have to learn it. You explained it to us.
No. The details, you can put anything into 2
Marcus
steps.
is punishment. So it deals with punishment. That's all.
Anyways,
That's what it was.
Sanhedrin.
I'm going to the store right now, okay?
What are we getting?
We're getting Megillah.
Okay.
All right, Chevra, Megillah it is.
Thank
Thank
you, gentlemen.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, Isaac. We'll read that book next. Bye-bye.